to anybody.
Right. This Hangout on Air is live with live football in London. Sigmund Bloom here, hosting Week 4 Sunday morning Hangout. Got Dr. Gene Bramall, Matt Waldman, and some football. And let's start with the football. Matt, do you want to be the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins?
No, but I kind of would like to be the coach of the New York Jets. But I'd like Charlie Strong to be the coach of the Miami Dolphins.
I
We can
like that
switch,
idea.
you
Here
know.
in Austin, we watched the UT. Well, it was up in Fort Worth, but UT is going to have a new coach soon. You could just see the team playing like that. I think that's what we're seeing from the Dolphins. A team that almost understands that it's this season's going to get a turnover, lost cause any second now. The team answered the bell last. Oh, the team answered the bell last year in a similar circumstance. So far, not doing that. And Gene, Chris Ivory running hot. If with the bye coming up, if I don't want to bloom him, if he makes us through this game without limping off, should we feel good about Ivory at least getting reset? Oh, I lost Gene. Okay, see, that Ivory question was just too much.
That'll
So
do it for you.
Ivory running hot in this game. Fitzpatrick hitting Brandon Marshall deep, and Marshall's value even with Decker. And Decker was not out on the field on the first play. I'm not sure how involved he's been. But Matt, is there anything that can fix? And there's Gene back.
I don't know
And
where
Decker.
And yeah, and Decker back. Gene, with Ivory, even with the multiple injuries, now that he looks good, I don't want to bloom him, if he makes it through this game without a setback.
No, yeah, I think it's a really good sign, and it was a little bit disappointing to read. I think it was yesterday or maybe Friday that they had some concerns about whether or not he'd be able to get through the game because he seemed to feel like last Sunday that he was ready to go and he was active. And
Right.
the team just held him out. So it was kind of surprised to see him go through the practice he did this week and then maybe not be ready. I don't know if that was a little bit of gamesmanship or what, but he certainly looks as healthy as he did leading up to that quad injury on the Monday Night Football game from a couple of weeks. And absolutely, if he gets through this game without any issues through the bye week, you would hope that he'd be good to go from here on out.
Matt, in the bye coming up for the Dolphins, craft for me a story that would make you feel good about owning Lamar Miller for the rest of the year.
They fire their offensive coordinator. They decide that they're going to revamp their offense, and they're going to simplify their offense. And I think that that's probably where I would feel pretty good about that, or that we hear about some sort of reinforcement to the line. But I just think that the way that the Dolphins play, it just seems like they're a little too disjointed to get into a flow. And I think that running the football, it is about getting into a flow with it. And you have to be consistent at it. It's just like boxing, where you got to hit to the body on a consistent basis. Even if you're not scoring major points, you need to continue to do that because you're setting up other shots.
Yeah.
I think that they pass to set up the run rather than run to set up the pass, and it doesn't work effectively for them because of the fact that the passing side of their game isn't consistent. When your best two receivers are crossing route guys and the occasional short seam and screen route, you're not going to get much out of that unless you are a great quarterback. And Ryan Tannehill's not a great quarterback.
Now. And like you said, the pass offense as the leverage that you're trying to flip the defense on is disjointed. Watching the Miami, and it's not any different today, they just look like they have no self-awareness on any given game of what's working, what's not working, where their advantages are, how they can exploit those advantages. And it's clear. It seems clear to me that this version of the Dolphins has run its course. It's just a formality of when that catches up. All right, Gene, Andrew Luck. We have a Thursday night game coming up, too.
Yeah, I think that's getting us with both Luck and Foster. I think they would have played Luck if he was ready, but you could tell from the tone of Adam Schefter's tweets and just how things were going. You're not supremely confident in your quarterback playing on Sunday if you cover all your bases by signing a running quarterback like Josh Johnson, who can easily and quickly assimilate some semblance of an offense if Matt Hasselbeck can't play. So the fact that you're doing that shows high concern that Luck wasn't ready to go. And I don't know what this report of a bruise around his shoulder on the MRI means this morning. It could be something similar to Drew Brees, where he's got a little bit of a muscle issue, or some sort of contusion around the joint. It could be similar to Randall Cobb, where he's got an AC sprain. Those can sometimes be called bruises and contusions too by mistake. It's really hard to know exactly what we're seeing on the MRI. I think it's a good sign that they thought he had a chance to play, and it probably is no more than a situation where they didn't feel like he was going to be accurate today, kind of playing through that injury, and there was a high enough risk of aggravating it for that divisional game on Thursday night that they decided to hold him out. And hopefully that's all that it is, and this goes the same way as Drew Brees will seemingly go, where he misses 1 week and then we're good to go after that.
So it's not time, if you are an Andrew Luck owner, it's not time to come up with a plan B for the intermediate term, hopefully, but that's the language we're at, just because. And certainly for week 5, you should have a backup plan just because of the short week. Matt, if you own T.Y. Hilton, you own Dante Moncrief, you own Frank Gore, how much does Luck being out change your approach this week when you set your lineup?
I'm up on Gore. I'm down on the other two, and I would say that Hilton is probably the guy that I would feel most comfortable with, only because I think he's the more experienced and the guy that is probably going to be a little bit more consistent with being where he's supposed to be and making plays with a different quarterback, whereas I think Moncrief is a little bit of an unknown in that arena, and a little bit younger in that arena. So to me, it would be Moncrief would be more of a flex play. T.Y. Hilton would probably be more of a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and Gore to me is probably a solid running back 2 at this stage of the game.
Gore's the one who's least scathed here. There's no way to put a positive spin on this for anybody in the offense. If you were weighing T.Y. Hilton against guys like John Brown, Brandon Cooks today, Allen Robinson, what way are you leaning?
I'm off the Colts offense altogether. I just don't trust Matt Hasselbeck. Maybe Frank Gore you consider as a running back too, thinking they may weigh heavily on him.
Right.
I think it's
Gore's
pushed me.
Good.
Yeah, and it's pushed me to Yeldon in some of these matchups too. So I spent the morning kind of trying to pivot away from Moncrief and on to Yeldon this morning. I didn't really, at least on FanDuel, I was struggling to find anybody I liked in that 6,000 range other than Moncrief. So he was in a few of my lineups, even though I was nervous about Luck. So I think Yeldon may be an interesting way to go this morning. I don't know what you guys feel about him. I know he's been getting some usage in the Colts. Defense is not.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll let Max wax philosophical about it. Matt wax philosophical.
Were you watching Max Kellerman on HBO Boxing this morning too?
Matt, we have to see, and we'll get Gene out to the show too. This will be part of Gene's program. That we're going to get him out to see Golden Dawn Orchestra. I was out seeing Golden Dawn Orchestra late last night. Go check them out, people. Man, Euphoria. It's like seriously, Matt. Imagine Sun Ra and P Funk smashed into one band. Yeldon, I want to let you talk about what he's been doing and why he might be a good play. But I think the larger story here is we've seen in the first 3 weeks, we all went into the season thinking, okay, Indy will win the division. Will they get home field or a bye? And they're vulnerable. They're totally vulnerable. I mean, Tennessee all but beat them last week, and they played a winning game with bookends of a losing game, and that's Tennessee, who we thought was going to clearly be the worst team in the division. Now Jacksonville has a chance. And Jacksonville, we saw what they did to this Miami team. We're seeing the power rank sort of sort itself out. But Yeldon has a play this week because he's a game script dependent back. Maybe we like the game script better with Matt Hasselbeck. What can he add other than a game script that can give him 20-plus touches?
Yeah, I think that what you get from Yeldon is you get a player that you have to ignore the box score with him thus far this season. You have to really look at what he's done on a play-by-play basis to appreciate the potential value that he offers to a fantasy owner this week. And the reason being is obviously what happened with Indianapolis, and it sets up an opportunity for Jacksonville to have more possessions, to do a little bit more against that lackluster Indianapolis defense. And you got to look at also who Jacksonville's faced, and you can see where Jacksonville might actually make this a pretty close game or a winnable game. And when you look at it from that game script potential, TJ Yeldon will factor prominently, mainly because, one, you've still got Denard Robinson out, means a little bit more carries for him. Toby Gerhart will probably get a little bit more looks, and you'll get Grant, the rookie from Auburn, getting some looks. But those are guys really on the periphery who are going to be little more than passing game or a break in short yardage from a Gerhart standpoint, which I doubt they'll even do that. Yeldon is quick. He's very good at being able to make the first man miss. He anticipates penetration extremely well. You see him being able to throw moves together. I honestly think that if TJ Yeldon were in Dallas right now, if TJ Yeldon were in a team with a better offensive line, he would be the rookie running back that everyone would be talking about right now. I think on a play-by-play basis, he has done more with less and done it impressively in limited time. We just need to see more of him so that as the game script flows in his favor, that he can build on what he does. And I think this is his best opportunity this week to do that thus far this season.
And this could be, like you said, we're going to talk a lot about rookie running backs. This is his chance to get his foot in the door. And again, I think it goes hand in hand with Jacksonville's chance to get their foot in the door in this division. Gene, you mentioned Arian Foster on the other side of that Thursday night issue coming up. Here he is, he's playing. Multiple reports now, Ian Rappaport, Aaron Wilson, that he won't have his full workload. On the other side, counterbalancing that is that we know, and I hesitate to say no, but we know Arian Foster is a player who basically controls his playing status. So if he's playing, that is based on, especially with the game. The reports were that he was cleared last week, and then it was just up to him. He said, "I'm ready to play." How ready are we to put him in our lineups, Gene?
Not that ready yet. I think he wouldn't really confirm anything on Friday, but I think he pretty much told everybody he was going to play. I think he pretty much told everybody he was thinking about Thursday being important, and I think he pretty much told everybody that he was going to rotate with Alfred Blue. Now, when we saw Arian Foster kind of battle through part of that groin issue and hamstring, or I don't remember what it was, he had a couple of different things last year. I think it was a groin. Mm-hmm. He came back and he played on passing situations only, and he got 8 to 10 targets out of the backfield just on those passing downs. I think that's a reasonable blueprint for what to expect today, because they can limit his ability to have to cut between the tackles and possibly stress that injury, even if he's fully healed. So I think that's kind of the game plan. I would expect maybe he gets a series in relief of Alfred Blue early on early downs, and if he looks good, runs effectively, and feels good, maybe they let him open it up a little bit in the second half. But I think they want to let him warm up in the first half, maybe let him cool down at halftime and see how things go after that. But I really think that both Indianapolis and Houston are targeting Thursday to be full strength, and Foster is aware of that. That's a rivalry. It's a situation they want to win the game, and that's just the wrench in the works. I think if both of those teams were playing next week, we could very easily be seeing Luck and Foster at full strength today.
So, Matt, if you have Foster, but you also have running backs who've been really disappointing so far, guys like C.J. Anderson, DeMarco Murray, who we'll talk about on the medical side, and Jeremy Hill, these types of backs, Matt, are you saying, I'm done with the frustration? Well, not done, but for this week I'm done. I'm rolling with Foster, or are you playing it safe because of Foster's first week back?
I think that if, Gene mentioned that he's probably only going to get a limited number of carries, correct?
Yeah, that's the report from Aaron Wilson and from Ian Rappaport is that he will be limited situational football.
I think we're looking at 7 to 12 touches and probably 60 to 70% of those being targets. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I would say this. I think that this is a week where I think most people at this point are probably frustrated if they're 1-3 or if they're if they're going to be 1-3 this week or that kind of thing. But I still think it's too early to get too reactive. I would say that Houston at Atlanta could this should be a little bit of a closer game, I think, only because it is going to be in Atlanta, and Atlanta's defense is unpredictable. Has been decent at times, but it's kind of like Houston's offense. They're kind of mirror images of each other. So this game could be a little bit up and down. If Atlanta builds a pretty big lead early on, if they get off to a good start, then it might be tough for Houston to mount any type of attack other than maybe some receptions and space to Foster, which might actually be more advantageous to him, from an injury usage standpoint. But I think that I would still look at the better matchups right now and weigh the factor between the number of carries you think Foster may get versus the opportunities versus the defense. Like an Isaiah Crowell. I know Isaiah Crowell, he missed some runs last week according to his coach. They're opening the job up for him. San Diego hasn't been the greatest team in terms of their defense. I would say that there are some teams that I would still probably give these backs who've been lackluster one more shot before I would go straight to Foster.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for a silver lining, if you're listening to us right now and you think, please, I need to play Foster, so make me feel better about it, I'll go back and say and focus on what Gene said, that if Foster's feeling good, and I think it does make a lot of sense, and Foster said something that revealed a lot when he said, hey, Doc said the best rehab is to get out there and play on it. And I think that's what today is for, is to play on it, see how it feels, and if it opens up and it feels good, maybe he does get more work than the 7 to 12 touches that Gene outlines. And he still looked good on those touches, but I think it was the Buffalo game last year when he didn't look good running the ball. He didn't even look great as a receiver, but he had 6 or 7 receptions. Now, that was a team without Cecil Shorts, without Nate Washington. They did have Andre Johnson, but the passing game looks better with Ryan Mallett now than it did then. So maybe they don't have to lean on him as that target. I mentioned it already, Gene, so let's go back to DeMarco Murray. I'll put it this way, incorporating everything together. Is there a decent Eagles running back play this week against Washington?
Probably not. I think you might consider Darren Sproles. The wind isn't as bad as it seemed it was going to be. The rain won't be an issue. I think Matthews is going to outtouch Murray at least 2-1. I think there's a chance that Murray may be active and not play, just as we saw Ivory last week, particularly if Matthews looks okay. And they're willing to let Sproles run the ball a little bit. I would not start Murray under any circumstances in any season-long nothing. Forget about it. Matthews you might consider, but I think of all of the three, especially if you're in a PPR league, Sproles is the only one I'd actively consider.
So Matt, Gene said pretty unequivocally, like, I wouldn't consider Murray this week. What about in your leagues on the trade market? Because DeMarco Murray still has some. I mean, DeMarco Murray won championships for us last year, Matt.
I'll take DeMarco. Yeah, I mean, I would when both are healthy.
Well, I'm just talking about if you're a DeMarco Murray owner, or on the flip side, if you aren't a DeMarco Murray owner, is this the moment to seize because he's DeMarco Murray and you might be able to get him cheap?
Yes, okay. Absolutely yes. Because when you look at the talent from both of them, Ryan Matthews may be physically as talented as DeMarco Murray, maybe even more talented, but between the ear holes, DeMarco Murray is light years ahead of Ryan Matthews, at least what we've seen historically. And the problem with Murray is that he's been frustrated in this new offense early on, and he got hurt. So you look at this, and I don't think that Chip Kelly is going to suddenly bench DeMarco Murray once Murray gets back to full health. I think Murray is probably one of the better stretch plays that we might be looking at in terms of if he gets back to full health.
Yeah. The one thing that worries me watching Matthews last week and watching Murray the first 2 weeks is that initial burst with so much penetration in the backfield. I think on Matthews' best run, the guard still got blown up, but Matthews' initial burst got him outside of that guard on that stretch play faster than Murray is just not a first step explosion guy.
Yeah.
It's just not his game.
Not anymore. But I will say this. The thing about the difference between those two to me is that Ryan Matthews has too much of a history of making a bad play, of making bad plays over and over again. And I think that at this stage, this year, I mean, if you're going to take the move that's going to win you a league, it could be one or the other of who you pick in this thing.
Yeah.
Argument for
If one
Matthew.
gets hurt,
Yeah.
if neither gets hurt, I think it's going to be frustrating for everybody.
Right, but the argument could be that Matthews has turned a corner and that he's changed a new team and that he's actually going to work hard and stay focused. And if he can do that, then these little mistakes won't crop up. But if Ryan Matthews is the Ryan Matthews we've seen all those years in San Diego, it's just a matter of time before he implodes.
And what's interesting is, like you said, it's the one of them could be a season winner if the other one goes down. Well, one of them has gotten hurt already, and one of them
He's played well.
Right, and
Yeah.
then, and the other one, and the one that got hurt is coming off of 500 touches ish, 500-ish touches last year. So, but here I'll throw this out: Ryan Matthews has never stayed healthy for an entire season.
That's right.
Maybe it's Darren Sproles. Maybe the play here is Darren Sproles, and then see who they sign. Maybe it's a fourth one.
Yeah,
Was it Kenyon Barner? Is Barner still on the roster?
Right. And Murray has been someone who's played well even when he's been banged up. He's had a history of being able to do that to some degree. But it's a situation where, if you're desperate, if you're like 0-4 next week, 0-5 the week after that, and you've got to make a move, then this might be one of those things, one of those areas where you might consider targeting. Yeah.
Well, in the background then, Matt, Gene, I want to hear your thoughts on this too. I'll ask you first. In the background here, Gene, is that the Philly offense the last 2 years, it's been David Harris, in Todd Bowles with those A-gap blitzes. Gene, Philadelphia has been like a multiplier in fantasy, right? Like if a player is a Philadelphia Eagle, we'd say, okay, that increases their fantasy ceiling this year by X. We saw Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, the quarterbacks, Straw McCoy, and so on. But this year, it's been a negative multiplier. They can't run the ball. Sam Bradford's not throwing the ball downfield. Defenses are compressing in on them, and it looks like, to be perfectly honest, one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Now, we know it's not going to be one of the – well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't even say anything. I mean, should we expect Philadelphia's offense to start to look more like the last 2 years?
No. And I don't have a really good reason for that other than just it's just kind of a gut feeling that the personnel isn't there yet. And I think Bradford has to get used to what's going on. It seems like they're not using Aguilar and Ertz to their full capability. They haven't figured out exactly what they want to do at the running back position yet. The offensive line really hasn't come together as they expected. So if it was just one thing, you would think that maybe it's a little bit easier to fix, and we would see that happen sooner than later. But this is, we see this every year where, you hope and you hope and you hope, and once you get through 3 or 4 weeks, if things aren't changing and things aren't gelling, teams aren't likely to get any healthier or any better or figure it out between Monday and Wednesday. You only have so much time. Maybe when you get to the bye week, something clicks and everybody gets a little bit healthy and they get some clarity on, all right, it doesn't make any sense to use all 3 of these running backs. We've got to find a way for Bradford to change his progressions a little bit so we see him use everybody rather than just Jordan Matthews out of the slot and Darren Sproles out of the backfield. We have to figure out how to get this offensive line to work together a little bit better. But I think maybe that's what my gut is telling me, is that there's just too many things to settle down at one time. I think it's still possible. We've seen every one of those groups, from Bradford to the running backs to the wide receivers and tight ends to the offensive line, play well in the past, but it all has to happen at the same time for a speed, no-huddle offense to work. Otherwise, you just spin in your wheels.
So I said something about Lamar Miller, Matt, that, what's the story that we would want to hear? I think the story we want to hear is Mark Sanchez is the quarterback. Because I feel like Gene laid out all those factors, and the factor where it all comes together, it's like the opposite of the rug that ties the room together. It's like the black hole where everything falls out. And Sam Bradford, because he just is not inspiring. He doesn't play in an inspiring way. He doesn't uplift the offense. He doesn't challenge the defense. He's not, Michael Vick and Nick Foles and Mark Sanchez, say what you want for them. And Sanchez was on the somewhat conservative side, but still was activating the offense. It doesn't feel like Bradford is And I don't know what I could say other than like a sports psychologist that rewires him. Am I over? Am I overreacting to Bradford? Can Bradford be different than he's been with the Rams before he got hurt?
If he gets a leg transplant, maybe he can.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we have to understand here, that this is that whole assumption of rational coaching, and we should put some of that on Chip Kelly, which is you you came from your major college program success came with mobile quarterbacks, came with guys that could move around and throw. And Mark Sanchez is a lot closer to that than what you get from Sam Bradford, who, as Eric Stoner said, probably could not smash a can with his leg right now. The way that the way
Well,
that
and was it like a non-mobile Alex Smith basically?
he is, and and it's a shame because Sam Bradford. This isn't about scouting. You look at Sam Bradford, what he did at Oklahoma, and this was a bombs away guy with just a beautiful deep arm, beautiful deep accuracy. But once you get the crap beat out of you in the NFL after a while, and those coaches who just stress safety, 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 get first downs. As quarterback coach Will Hewlett said to me this week in our RSP film room, he was he was saying to me, he said, one of the biggest sayings that people have is that if you do everything that the coaches tell you as a quarterback, every play will be a check down, which should tell you that Alex Smith is that apple polishing student in quarterback class right now. Unfortunately, that's not how the NFL should work. But if you are a scheme dependent, play dependent, autumn. What is it? Your automaton comment about Philadelphia? Well, it may only naturally makes sense that you're going to look for someone to enact your game plan to a T, and that means that unless it's in a huge open play, then you're going to check down a lot. You're going to play it safe, and if you can't move around a lot to actually even create anything when the defense takes that away, well, then you get your Alex Smith syndrome, who can actually move, but more like you get what you get with Sam Bradford right now. So yeah, I think someone like Mark Sanchez probably would be, in theory, a better play. Josh Johnson, to me, would have been a great signing for the Philadelphia Eagles, in theory, because that's closer to the quarterback that they need for this offense, based on what success they've had and haven't had thus far in with this Chip Kelly regime.
Yeah, well, I think that you got it, and really nice one-handed catch by Eric Decker, who's looking just fine. I think you hit it when it's like, what did you expect, Chip Kelly? This is what you get. You get this Sam Bradford. This is the Sam Bradford we've seen. Early in his career, Sam Bradford was improvisational. He was courageous. He was, in his rookie year, I thought this was the next great NFL quarterback. He was putting the team on his back, and in the moment, in a way that you rarely see rookie quarterbacks be able to be in the moment. Cam Newton and Andrew Luck were the only other guys I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years that really seemed in tune with the game already as a rookie. And not so much. Okay, we should move on to Drew Brees, Gene. We got two layers here. One is playing Brees, and the other is just, as we talked about, Andrew Luck being out being this depressing effect on Indy being in for Brees. Now, I think we can say they're in the same galaxy of types of injuries. So the two situations are somewhat analogous. So with Brees back, how much wind does that put in the offense's sails, Gene?
I think it puts a little bit. Hopefully it opens up things for Mark Ingram a little bit more than we've seen. I think it's a reasonable spot for him today. Related to Brees, it was a good sign that he went through 3 consecutive practices, even though they were limited. He was able to throw 3 days in a row without any setbacks in terms of weakness, pain, anything that he'd been feeling before, and that seemed to have resolved early enough in the week. However, I don't think that means that he couldn't become fatigued today if he needs to throw 35 to 40 passes. Doesn't completely rule out the possibility of an aggravation today. And I think because his arm has not been in condition over the past couple of weeks, it's possible that we see some of the same accuracy issues that we've seen from him in the past. So I don't know that I think he's a slam dunk quarterback one today, despite the matchup. But I think that if you have him, what I think I wrote this morning was, if you've got another quarterback one on your roster that you can use, if you have Brees and Newton or Brees and Palmer or somebody along those lines. I think you can wait and watch Breeze and hope that he looks as accurate as he's been in the past, and not what we saw from him 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, let's go. I'm going to take Gene's proclamation, Matt, and I'm going to add a spin to it, because he says play your quarterback ones over Drew Brees today. Against the Giants. What about Derek? What about Andy Dalton against KC? And the inherent question here is, right now in our minds, are they quarterback ones? So take that apart.
Okay, so you said, is Andy Dalton a quarterback one, and then you got a little jumpy on the one before that. Who was the other quarterback?
I had something. Yeah. That's what I get for having a site
You're
with
clear
auto
now.
video play in the background.
That's okay.
Yeah. So Tyrod Taylor, Derek Carr, and Andy Dalton.
Okay, I would say that
these guys have been quarterback.
Yeah. I would say that Andy Dalton is a quarterback one, though he'll get a little bit more of a test if Kansas City's best cornerback actually is returning this week and looks good. That could give them a little bit more of a challenge, but I think there's enough weapons there that you have to consider Dalton. Still consider him a low-end quarterback one, even if he's producing as a high-end quarterback one right now. I would still give him that QB
over
one.
Breeze, and where the rubber meets the road is if you're weighing Breeze against these guys today.
Yeah, I would be putting Dalton over Breeze right now. Then I would say Taylor and Breeze are about even. I expect Taylor. I would give Taylor the bit of the edge because he is healthy and that offense seems to be clicking, and they're playing the New York Giants. So I would say that I kind of like that one. I would say that even from a matchup perspective, Derek Carr is probably. Derek Carr is also a better play right now this week, but not long term. I think that this week is just, the matchup with Chicago is too good not to consider him.
Yeah, and I think that you play all three of them over Breeze this week, and matchup wise, next week New Orleans goes to Philadelphia, so we'll watch that. But Buffalo goes to Tennessee, not that worried about that. Oakland goes to Denver. Okay, maybe you bench Derek Carr in that case. And Andy Dalton is going to play Seattle, but Seattle coming to Cincinnati. So some things to think about, but we have to resort. I did tiers going forward this week. I published them, and I think it is time 3 weeks in, like Gene was saying. We've seen 3 weeks now, so we can start taking some stances that really impact the rest of the season here. And of course, Breeze impacts Ingram, as Gene brought up, but Matt, also Brandon Cooks. And you've really from the get-go been tapping the brakes on Brandon Cooks. Is there a scenario here where Breeze revives him back to the wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1 we expected when we drafted him in the 3rd round?
Yes, if they can get the running game going. They can get the running game going enough where the play action works, and Breeze has more targets where he can consistently hit Cooks, where Cooks is well behind the secondary. Cooks is a great deep threat as long as he does not have to make a contested catch. He can do it sometimes, but not enough to feel comfortable with him as a Brandon Marshall type, as a A.J. Green, Julio Jones type of player where you have faith that he is going to come down with the ball. You want his back to the defender when that ball is arriving, or you want him facing up on the defender on a short pass with open field ahead of him to win. He's not Steve Smith. And I think I think a lot of people anticipated that he would be the next Steve Smith, and there is no other Steve Smith. I mean, so or even Antonio Brown to that level.
Mm-hmm.
He's not either of those guys, and he's very good, but to me, he's a wide receiver 3, really trying to function as a wide receiver 1 in this offense, and they are learning slowly and painfully that he's not that player that's going to win in those tight situations. So that means that something else is going to have to compensate, and that means that either C.J. Spiller is going to have to turn it on and come back with a vengeance and look like he did that one season in Buffalo where he was just fantastic.
Right.
Or Mark Ingram, the combination of those 3 guys, and then just maybe one other player on that.
Willie Snead.
Willie Snead, Brandon Coleman, who's not going to do it. It doesn't look
It's not
like.
going to be Brandon Coleman.
Yeah, and it's not going to be Colston. It doesn't look like
No.
either. Colston
Colston's
looks like.
trying to be Colston, but he's old. I mean, he's
Yeah.
trying to catch those. He's just getting popped, and it just looks like
He looks like your grandpa trying to get out of the easy
yeah,
chair and get
yeah,
up
he
to play
wants to.
frisbee,
I mean, he's courageous. He's still giving them that presence in the middle of the field until it's actually like time to make the play. Snead's interesting as a bit more formidable version of Lance Moore, but I want to point out again, and folks, if you don't know the RSP, MattWaldmanRSP.com, and you're not getting the RSP, you're missing out on stuff that's going to foreshadow this, because Matt, you wrote a terrific article, and you and I saw the same game probably around the same time, or at least around the time you wrote that article about what Ifo Ekpe Olumu, and how in the Oregon State game, Cook saw coverage more like the coverage he was going to see in the NFL, and he did not flourish against it on his contested balls. So that's why you can see, I mean, seeing college players when everything is going their way shows you their strengths, but it isn't necessarily going to give you a lot of insight into how it's going to translate, because, well,
you always have to project. You always have to project what would it likely be in the NFL, and that takes watching NFL games to see how that template would fit over top of what you're seeing in the college game.
right. And just what happens whenever your strengths are taken away. What's your counter? And like you said, he's not Steve Smith. He's not Antonio Brown. He's not going to win these contested balls and make these plays. Gene, we haven't even talked about really the biggest situation looming over lineups yet this week, because it's a Monday night situation with Marshawn Lynch.
I don't think he's playing.
Well, and okay, so you anticipated where I was going with this, because Gene, y'all know I'm nuts. All right, everybody's familiar with me here. I'm just advising people as if Rawls will start. When people are asking me start-sit questions this morning, really since Friday, this is how I've been doing it. I'm projecting Rawls with 18, 20 touches, favorable matchup at home, prime time. I see him as a strong running back too this week, and talk me out of it, Gene.
I don't know if I can talk you out of it, but the nagging doubt in the back of my mind is Fred Jackson. I think they tried to prepare last week as if Lynch was going to play. They were expecting him to play, and then they were ahead, so they were happy to see what they had with Rawls. Now, if you think Rawls looked well enough last week, and if you think that Jackson is just kind of your change of pace / passing down back, then I think it's Rawls, and more Rawls today. But there's a little bit of a nagging doubt in my mind that we won't see more Fred Jackson this week than we saw last week. You agree? Don't agree? That's
I'll
kind
say
of the
this.
sticking point in my head with him right now.
I'll say this as the kitty cat is surfacing. Even if you project that, sorry, Lions fans. I think it's a tradition now on the Audible this year that I apologize to Lions fans every single show. I don't see how Detroit hangs with them in this game. I mean, Matthew Stafford's banged up. Offensive line is a sieve. The running game, they can't get their heads out of their anuses. What's the story you tell where Detroit comes into Seattle and gives them a whale of a game? So Thomas Rawls is going to get the second half work either way. And Thomas Rawls, as you mentioned, Gene, looked good. Looked like a guy like, we like that guy. We want to use more of that guy. But Matt, again, like I'm not conservative about these kinds of things. I'm saying full speed ahead with Rawls. If people are asking you about lineup decisions with Rawls this morning, where are you, Matt?
I see him as a running back too. I would say running back 2 is probably his upside, and I would say that his downside is probably as a flex play as a running back 4 actually. But I would put him. I would still feel comfortable enough to start him. I'm actually starting him in at least one weekly lineup just as an opportunity to take a chance, and in a league where I can use him as a running back 4. So if you have if you're in some of those leagues where flexes are wild and in the way that your setups are, then Rawls is a really nice play. But if you're just a 2 running back lineup, then I would probably look at guys like Ryan Matthews a little bit over him. If I would, and just go with the more experienced guy, understanding that Seattle's offensive line is not good, and that took them the second half of that game to actually figure things out enough for Rawls to really do anything, or anybody on that offense to do anything. So Detroit's going to offer a stiffer test than Chicago, and if Detroit gets ahead, and they still have a puncher's chance with Stafford's arm and Calvin Johnson, or even Golden Tate, who knows this defense pretty darn well.
There's your revenge game narrative this week.
I mean, I see as we can reverse.
But Jim Caldwell, do you really see Jim Caldwell getting these guys up to the point where they can match the intensity of Seattle at home in prime time?
I can see Matthew Stafford channeling his inner Jay Cutler and saying, "Screw, Caldwell, we're going to do this," and I see this kind of being open a little bit and doing some things like that. I mean, I kind of see. Do I think it can happen? I'm just like I said, I'm channeling my inner Steeler neuroses for the Seahawks right now.
And I should mention, I didn't mention that at the top of the show. Getting a lot of notes from people. That they really enjoyed that Thursday night, and I'm glad because what it should resonate with is we really are just y'all. I mean, we're the same people, and that's how we experience football. Even though we put on our facade of very sober analysis. Well, not Gene. Gene is always very sober analysis, but otherwise, that's how we roll when it comes to football. And hopefully, we'll have some chances to have some more Thursday night Steelers games to indulge y'all. But with Rawls in Detroit and Seattle, again, I'm projecting game script here to be this is going to be a fun coronation. Seattle's just like the primetime game, the last week afternoon game. Like, they're back. Everyone's going to get right. Rawls is going to get right. And, of course, you're going to see some Fred Jackson and probably very little Marshawn Lynch. It's that tidal wave. Our good friend Ryan Riddle saying that trying to tackle Marshawn Lynch is like trying to tackle a wave. Well, the wave is the Seattle team, and Detroit is a team playing about the same way Miami's been playing coming into this game. So I agree with you, Matt, that we're going to be watching changes. So let's go to the flip side of that on the Detroit running back side. Gene, I'll give you the first shot of this. I mean, with Joik Bell ankle, and we're not – drop him if you haven't already, please. I mean, it's I don't think Joik Bell is that different than the Joik Bell we've seen, but when you're a one-speed try-hard runner, you don't have much margin. Once you lose a little bit, you've lost what you had. So how excited are we, Gene, to trot Amir Abdullah out with speaking of unveils, coronations on the primetime stage? Is this Abdullah's breakout game?
I'm going to answer that question with another question. Who is clearly the better pass protector between Abdullah and Riddick? Because I think that's what Stafford needs to stay upright and have any chance of doing anything
is it
this
Zenner?
Weekend at all.
How's Zenner as a pass protector, Matt? I'm not to cut you off, but Matt, this is RSP kind of stuff.
He's okay. I think that Abdullah's gotten better in the preseason. I've noticed that a good bit, and they were happy with his progress. But I would say that, Riddick is more experienced, and Zenner is, the bigger body who has shown consistently, even in college, that he can body up somebody of his size or a little larger.
So go ahead, Gene. I'm sorry. I just wanted to toss that in.
I think that's it. I think on the road, as much as a beating as Stafford has taken, I just don't know whether or not you're going to see guys like Abdullah and Riddick out of the backfield that much. I think they're going to try to protect as much as possible. It could be a week for Zenner to get a whole lot more touches than you would think. I don't like the Detroit Lions at all this week. I think Seattle's got a good chance of really putting it on them, and I'm worried about that. I think the key to anything with the Lions offense is pass protection this week. So it just looks like 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out to me.
Yeah. Well, and we're watching Miami, by the way, punch their way out of the corner here. Nice drive. Jake Stoneburner, the correct answer. And even on the touchdown play, there are like 4 moving parts to the play, and it worked. But it's just so frustrating when you see offensive coordinators put their fingerprints all over everything instead of just kind of letting guys play and do what they like. But it worked. We'll see. But I think Detroit's next up in the queue of teams to start saying something has to change, and it all points to the head coach. I mean, that's just, and again, some of it is over intricate schemes, deferring to coaches who are doing that. And some of it is, are you getting your team up? Is your team playing with intensity? Chicago, one of the teams playing with no intensity, and we don't have to talk about the ifs with Chicago because they're already selling off their players. The next player may be Matt Forte. I'm excitable. So as soon as I heard that they were selling off players, immediately I was like, ooh, Baltimore. Well, maybe not Baltimore now that Justin Forsett and the running blocking is going again. Um, Indy, Denver. Ooh, where could he go? Am I getting ahead of myself, Matt? Are you going to be the patented wet blanket here to say that doesn't pass the sniff test? Matt Forte is not going anywhere.
No, I think that passes the sniff test very well because really, I mean, he's not a player that this organization was ever excited about, I think, wanting to re-sign for the amount of money that they had to spend. And he is getting older. And if they're gonna, just redo this offense, and Chris Ivory is just
Running
tearing through
hot.
people, it's
He's
just
Marshawn
wonderful.
Lynch. Maybe not. Maybe we can take the if human part because Marshawn Lynch is human now.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just he's going to take the baton from He runs, and
That
Rawls
was
also
Sue.
runs the same way. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
But I would say that Forte still has enough left in the tank that if you're a team that needs to make a 1-year run, this is the guy that you want to get. And I would think,
Denver.
Denver. I still think I like the Baltimore idea because
Yeah.
Forsett is a backup. We all know this. He's just a good backup who's capable of playing, at a high level. But man, if you put Forte in that offense, that would be something sweet. This is a team that could go on a run. Yeah. So I would definitely do that, especially because he knows the system. If you know the system and it's not that much different, then why not make that instant transition, especially when you've lost other weapons that that you're waiting to have come back. So that wouldn't be a bad team. I certainly think that it would be a shame to see him go to teams that have a long way to go. Like a Cleveland needs a running back right now.
Tennessee.
Tennessee, teams like that would stink. But even the New York Giants, I mean, I know that they're not going to invest after they've invested in Shane Vereen and Rashad Jennings, but Forte is both those guys put into one, and then you can use Andre Williams as that hammer that you like to do. Just hold on to that thing tight. But I mean, anyway, I do like the idea of him.
You're open to it.
I'm very open.
And the team's making the run, and then that's why Baltimore, Denver, Indy, and Baltimore, especially because of the system, which is a great thing to bring up. Matt, if he gets traded, or do we care about Jeremy Langford at all?
Yeah, because he has a puncher's chance. He's got speed, and he has run fairly hard this offseason. I've seen him in some ways where I felt like what he did at Michigan State is translating a little more than I thought. It's not enough that I would say, he's an instant running back too, but I would add him to your roster because I think he gives you, he may not be as good even as Thomas Rawls, but I think he gives you that similar type of opportunity to do some work. And he is a decent pass catcher. So get him in space, he can run, he can make the first man miss, and he can often break at least through a wrap and get some yards. But I would say that I wouldn't look at him as the savior. I'd look at him as more of a luxury that you can pick up and hold on to and maybe hope he'll be trade bait for you or can help you in a pinch on a bye week.
It's still Chicago's offense. Obviously other running back potential value implicated. Forsett, you said backup, Matt. Let's say Forsett is roughly where like Chester Taylor was whenever Minnesota drafted Adrian Peterson, which is that's not a slight. It's just saying that you can still upgrade from that.
Most teams view him as a backup because they don't want a guy of his size and of his track record being the head of their offense. But Baltimore has been a little bit more progressive thinking and open and just letting the play dictate itself. So good for them. Unfortunately, it hasn't just worked out so far early on.
Gene, I'll ask you this in a DFS form, since I know that you're setting more DFS lineups than Matt and I are. And this has a medical component and a few other things, but I'll just serve the question up to you this way, Gene. Do you have a DFS lineup this week without Carlos Williams in it?
Yeah, a few. I think you have to fade him a little bit. You can't have 100% of them in tournaments. So in your GPP lineups, you got to find a way to get him out of some of those things. But in a cash lineup, I think I've got a Forte Latavius Murray lineup here without Williams in it. But I think the price point is so good. The number of touches he's going to get is so good. We know that he's going to be used heavily. The Giants are not great against the run at all. It's one of those situations where I think you just put him in your lineup and you try to beat your competition at every other spot because he's going to be 50 to 60% owned. And whatever cash games you're in, if you're playing head-to-heads, your opponent's very likely to have him in there. You may as well try to get find your winning spots in the relative value at other positions.
And how many more weeks are we going to be asking this question?
A few. I think as we talked about on Thursday, I think Buffalo's bye week is coming in week 8. You can see McCoy now saying he's not going to come back until he's healthy. You can see Williams establishing himself as a viable and a better than viable player. So they probably will not rush him in the same way that maybe they did for week 1 and week 2. Now that they know what they have in Williams, that their season is going as well as it has been, and the defense continues to play well. So I think. I don't know that we'll see McCoy back until after the bye week, and if we see him before that, he's not likely to get his usual usage.
Another question about just today, Matt. San Diego is going to be missing 3, 4 of their starting offensive linemen. So Melvin Gordon, Phillip Rivers, and just your whole outlook for San Diego, because Cleveland looked like one of these games, Cleveland at home, everything's going to get right, just like Seattle against Chicago last week. How much are we backing off of that, knowing the state of the Chargers' offensive line?
That's a good question. I mean, thinking about it from that standpoint, it's difficult because Cleveland has given up a lot in the run game thus far, and they haven't been great at rushing the passer. But if you look at the fact that San Diego is struggling as well. Now, let me ask you this, because it's something I haven't kept up with a great deal, but are those injuries recent from last Sunday, or are they what they've
except for Fluker? Fluker, I think, is on the way back up from his early injury, but I think it's Dunlap and Watt are banged up, and there's one other that I'm forgetting. But the offensive line, I think they lost 3 during the game last week.
Okay, so then, yeah, that makes sense. Then looking at it from that perspective, you probably do have to tame your expectations for Rivers a little bit, but I just don't think that Cleveland has been playing well enough defensively that you would, Derek Carr, I don't think has the greatest offensive line. I don't think that, he's more mobile than Rivers, but he's not as maneuverable, I would say. I think Rivers is probably a little savvier in that regard, so I would still play Rivers. Gordon, I was looking at as a guy that could get really healthy against Cleveland's defense. Right. So now I'm a little bit more, thinking about that. My expectations are a little bit more tame to the fact that I'm probably going to be looking at some of my DFS lineups where I had Gordon in there and may rethink that, because I've had him in about 3 or 4 of my 10 lineups.
Well, here's someone you could pivot to from Gordon, Matt, because you're watching it every week for us, Easter egg. Is Devontae Freeman. Is Freeman an auto play? I mean, even in redraft leagues, is Freeman one of those guys that, like, why are you even asking whether to play him? Tevin Coleman's not going to play, and you saw what he did last week. Is that where we're at with Freeman right now?
No, because Dallas's defensive line is a shell of itself. So this was like basically, this is the type of situation where they don't even have a lot of their starters in who they want to have in there. So to me, Freeman is a good back, but he's kind of more he might be eventually a +4 set type of guy down the line, and I don't think he's fully there yet even. And Atlanta's offensive line has played well, but we're talking about Watt and Clowney and those characters coming out of the Houston bus there, and and that's kind of scary for me. I mean, this defense is kind of like Stephen King's It, so I would probably not be exactly enthusiastic about the run game, against Houston with Atlanta's team, even if they've looked better than we expected. Because again, we went from August going, Atlanta might not be able to run at all. I mean, like, not even be able to average 3 yards a carry, to now we're thinking, wow, Atlanta might be able to be pretty good against some bad defenses. I don't think we're at Atlanta's a top run offense yet.
But their schedule is mostly bad defenses. Their schedules, I mean, just the NFC South schedules are so easy. Judging by what we know right now.
Yeah, but this week
Houston. No. And we just see in Miami settling down, and we saw, it was interesting, Matt, we just saw that play where Tannehill got flushed from the pocket and made a really nice throw across his body, kind of, he's flushed one way, squared up and made a really nice throw to Greg Jennings. But as you talked about, we rarely get to see Tannehill play with any sort of looseness to his game. I've seen him react very well under pressure and reset and be able to make these kinds of throws. But
He needs the coaching equivalent of Gene Hackman in the replacements to say, think less and play more.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
That's what I was saying.
loosen up. Just
Yeah,
loosen up, dude.
yeah, exactly.
That's really what he needs, and he does not have that. And has not had that since he came in the league, because they were like, you're a developmental project. We're making a first-round pick. We're going to overload you with everything. And he's proven smart enough to handle that, but he's a high-functioning robot.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is, really quickly, I want to just point out a really great story that went around this week about Mike Sherman, who was intimately connected to Tannehill in college and the pros. He's coaching a high school team now on Cape Cod. It's really fascinating to hear his
Lobster
account.
roll. There we go.
Yeah, hey, we have there's a good lobster roll trailer here in Austin. Lobster, it's always good. But what's interesting is, he talked about things like he almost cost his team a problem in a game because he didn't factor in rush hour traffic, because they had like an 80-mile bus ride to the game, and he did one walkthrough because every bus he'd ever taken to a game had a police escort. So, just it's a kind of a symbolic idea of the change. Gene, I get carried away, and you can talk about Josh Norman here too. I get carried away by Mike Evans. I watched the Mike Evans tape last week, and I thought, this is the makings of a Julio Jones, Antonio Brown kind of situation. And maybe when Austin Seferian-Jenkins gets back, the targets come back a little bit. But Austin Seferian-Jenkins isn't going to be back for another 2, 3, 4 weeks at least. But Josh Norman, Gene, and this again, and you talk about DFS, and what we want, what can make your DFS week in a tournament is having a play that the sharps or the people on top of everything are saying, I'm going away from that play. Is Evans that kind of play this week?
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to find out the answer to probably 4 different questions this week. One, will the Tampa Bay offensive coaches allow Jameis Winston to target number 1 cornerbacks, which I think Josh Norman is falling into that category now, or at least he's so much better than the guys on the other side that you're much less willing to target him as a game plan perspective. Does Jameis Winston care? Is he going to throw to Mike Evans no matter what?
No. The answer is no.
So, I mean, that's possible. That's possible. I mean, the game plan may be throw to
I looked ahead at the
Jackson
answer sheet,
and whatever
Gene.
else. Yeah. So,
Full steam ahead, man.
Yeah. So that's part of it. We'll find out if Mike Evans is on the level of Julio Jones as matchup independent. That make a difference who you put on him. He's going to get open and convert a lot of those targets. If he doesn't gain separation either due to injury or just because Josh Norman is that good. And that's the other question. We're getting closer to wanting to know, is Josh Norman, is Desmond Trufant, are a couple of these other players rising to the level of Vontae Davis and maybe Richard Sherman, but those sorts of questions. I think there's a lot of questions to be answered today. I don't have a lot of Mike Evans. In fact, I don't think I have any Mike Evans just because there are a couple of other players I like better. But I think your argument is good based on what you're seeing on tape and based on what we know from Jameis Winston. This may be a situation where Mike Evans is going to get 10 to 12 targets, whereas another team may only give their number 1 wide receiver, not Julio, not such and such and so, only 6 to 8 in this situation. And if that's the case, then yes, he's absolutely a smart contrarian play.
And a lot of people brought up what Evans did versus Carolina last year. Josh McCown was the quarterback. And he did beat Norman for a touchdown in the second game. It was like a 2 for 13 and a touchdown line, but the touchdown
I'm
did
at
come
him right now. I'm at Mike Evans right now. I like that play. I was thinking about him before you even brought up this question in one of these games, and I'm going to add him now.
Chris Ivory looks so good, and I just want to point out as we're watching Chris Ivory that the combination that makes a running back like Chris Ivory sort of intoxicating to watch is that he runs hot with a low pad level. So what do you tackle? Like, what do you try to tackle? You're trying to tackle knees and shoulder pads, basically, when he's coming at you because of that pad level. And again, when we get to see Rawls, and we'll get to see some of Rawls tomorrow night, regardless, for those of you that aren't familiar with him yet, very similar. And I'll end with this note. Kristen Michael. Now, of course, the universal joke could be on me because doubly on me, because first, earlier this week I was saying, okay, Randall did enough that I think, it's hard for me to keep telling you to roster somebody who isn't even active. So, dropping Michael for Rawls earlier this week, that was the right move, even Michael for Zenner, you're weighing it out. But now, a lot more buzz that Michael's going to be active and get a chance. Matt, why should we be excited about that?
Because you're really looking at a player who can do everything for you if he is focused and ready to go. You're looking at a guy with the size and power to be able to run through tackles and bounce off of hits. I'm talking not just hits from safeties or cornerbacks, but often some linebackers. He has that kind of balance to his game. He also has that movement to make people miss because of his skill to spin or juke or make hard lateral cuts. Then you have the great acceleration that comes with it, and this is a guy that can break a long play. He can catch out of the backfield. He can also block. So he's an all-around wide receiver. All-around running back. And he's on a team that has a very good offensive front for him to be able to run behind. There's a guy that can carry it 18 to 25 touches in a game and deliver for you week to week. We're talking about, is he Le'Veon Bell good? No. But he's someone who, if he continues to put things together and grow up, he could be in that tier one day. So right now, he's not. But that's why you should be excited about him, because he can give you moments like that. Right now, if you're going to be conservative, you say he's Bryce Brown. When Bryce Brown first got those touches with
Right.
Philadelphia, when he set the record in the NFL for 2 games with the way that he played, where you could see that he was a complete wild thing, and he is the NFL's version of the movie Major League's Wild Thing, played by Charlie Sheen. That's basically what we have with him right now.
Well, and you bring that up. Now, one thing I will say, and I think that's a really good idea to give people, and a really good idea to give people the range of outcomes and how we could have a hot start that maybe fizzles out. But part of the reason Bryce Brown fizzled out was he had flaws that could be exploited. I don't know that Christine Michael has flaws on the field that can be exploited. It's more dedication or instilling trust in the coaches. But I'll say this, and you can tell me if I'm off base, Matt. I think part of why Dallas, or what could help Dallas's offensive line click, is a running back that finishes runs. And this is no disrespect to Joseph Randle. He just doesn't have the sand in his pants or run with the intensity to push piles and to break tackles that are like the kind that get everybody to stand up. I mean, he breaks leg tackles. Randle's been doing a great job breaking tackles, but it's been mostly low tackles around the ankles and knees and things like that, where Michael can get. Do you think offensive lines get fired up to block for physical runners?
Absolutely, they do. That's what it's all about, is being able to dominate and break the will of the opponent, and it's those will breakers on short runs and being able to push the pile and wearing defenses out to give extra effort to have to stop somebody. And you're right about Randle. Randle doesn't do that consistently enough. Darren McFadden is, Mr. Glass. I mean, he might puncture you with a sharp end, but at the same time, that shard might crumble into a million pieces after, one hard hit. So it's or just, one type of break. And we're seeing actually Ryan Fitzpatrick channel his inner running back. So it's interesting to see this lawn gnome running around like he does. He looks like a lawn gnome with that beard. Like I should talk, but he's got that thing going on, man.
You should talk. We could have the lawn.
I even have the thing going on here up top, but we put one on him and we could stick him in a yard somewhere, man. It would like.
Gene, you've been patient, and we're gonna wind this up. We're gonna a couple minutes over. I just wanted to. So, Gene, you're the sober one. Gene Bramble, brought to you by Xanax. Are you chuckling at people like me getting people excited about a running back who hasn't even been active?
No, not really.
There you go.
No, I mean that's what we do. This is if you're looking back, trying to figure out what's going on, that's one thing. But the idea, what helps you do well in this hobby, is making smart predictions on what's going to happen in the future. And I think this is as much talent as situation when you talk about Michael, and it's exactly the type of player you should be trying to be ahead of the curve on.
Yeah. It's been a crazy year already. Dion Lewis, Carlos Williams, and now next up Thomas Rawls, maybe Christine Michael, Zach Zenner. These are our favorites. They're close to our hearts, these running backs. You're close to our hearts. The NFL is close to our hearts as we're watching Ryan Fitzpatrick in this 2-minute drill. The quad header. I think somebody said something like, The second Monday night game in week 1 is like that third piece of pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. We'll get ready to have another third piece of pumpkin pie. It makes you feel a little bit queasy, but come on, you know you want it. And we appreciate that you keep coming back for third pieces of pumpkin pie, as we're doing 10 shows a week now, I think. I don't even know if that counts the Hangouts or not. But y'all are the best. And I'm glad that what we did Thursday night tickled y'all, and I hope we continue to provide what you're looking for, and mainly is accompaniment on this wonderful journey through this NFL season. Accompaniment with Dr. Gene, with Matt Waldman, everybody else from the Audible crew from footballguys.com. Have a great week 4, and stay classy.